Hey guys, Robert here, and today I have a very special guest with me, Mr. J.M. DeMatteis. Did I pronounce it right?
DeMatteis, you got it.
Yep, a big, huge, person in the comic book industry. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would agree with me on that. Thank you so much for coming on here,
I'm
sir.
happy to be here. Happy to talk to you.
Yep, you have been involved with so many books. I mean, from Marvel, DC, you've worked on Spider-Man. But the definition of blah ha ha, it's credited to you and Keith Giffen so much. This whole, so much work you have done, and we feel like you deserve even more credit than you've ever gotten, if you ask me. But
Thank you.
how did you get started in the industry?
How did I get started? That's a great question. Um, I started let's go all the way back. I was
Yep.
always a creative kid. My
Mm-hmm.
first love as a kid was drawing. I spent a good part of my childhood on the floor drawing, and
Mm-hmm.
that was my first passion. I was a musician. I was singer songwriter. I played in bands, but I always liked to write as well. And I was a rock and roll journalist. I did a lot of journalism, but I always was interested in comics. Always loved comics. And long story short, because it's a longest saga and we don't have enough
Yeah,
time,
yeah, right.
I
We never know.
I really broke in back in the late 70s. DC had their line of what they called the mystery books because they weren't
Mm,
allowed to say horror comics in those days.
right.
House of Mystery, House of Secrets, Weird War Tales, weird everything. And so that was the place where writers kind of broke in and were given an opportunity to learn their craft because we were working on stories that ranged in general between 5 and 8 pages. So you
Mm-hmm.
get your 5 or 8 page story. I started working with Paul Levitz. He was the first editor that I worked with. And
Mm-hmm.
in 5 or 8 pages, you had to tell a complete story with a beginning, a middle, and end. You had to do a character arc. You had to get emotion in there. You had to have a really good, solid story and get it all across in this little bit amount of time. And that was a
Mm-hmm.
really fantastic way to learn the basics of the craft of comic book writing. So that's how
Yep.
I started at DC, and it was sort of like you would move incrementally in stages. So I worked on a lot of that stuff. And I remember when I got my first full-length Weird War Tales to write,
Mm-hmm.
22 pages. Oh my God, so much room to tell a story
Ooh,
after
yep.
after writing 6 or 8 pages. And then slowly they moved you over to some superhero stuff. So I did short
Mm-hmm.
Batman stories and Red Tornado and Hawkman and some other things. And then I got my first full-length superhero story which was a Batman, a Brave and the Bold issue with Batman
Ooh.
and Hawkman. And so, it just built from there. And then I went from DC over to Marvel, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yep. But yeah, you have been known for, like I said before, like blah ha ha with Keith Giffen. First of all, your collaboration with Keith, it's it's been one of the best right up to me. You above even like Dan Abbott Landing, all those others I could just think about that are known collaborators. You guys have done some of the best stuff. The blah ha ha era and all that stuff is just the tip of the iceberg. And
Yeah, when after Keith passed away, I looked at
oh
the list of
yeah.
all the projects that we worked on together. We did a lot of projects together over the course of 30 something years. Pretty
Yeah.
amazing thing. And one of the great creative collaborations of my career, one of the single most creative human beings I've ever known. Uh, Total character
Oh
in
yeah. Yep.
in in the in
I've met
the
him.
in the best sense of the word. Really
Yep.
unique, but just as we were talking just before we started, and I said he was just a fountain of creativity.
Oh, hell
Just
yeah,
I
hell yeah.
always imagine Keith like literally like there's a fountain coming out of his head, and bubbles, and every bubble is an idea, and there's more ideas and more ideas, and that's just the way he was.
Yeah, but
Uh,
I'm so glad DC let him still keep on working well into the throughout all of his years. Like even if it's like small books, you saw he had a passion to it. He had ideas, so much stuff. I am just so grateful for all of his work, but especially this is still one of my favorites that you guys have ever done, Hero
yeah, it's
Squared.
probably my favorite project that Keith and I have ever done together. I mean, we'd been working together for quite some time at that point. This was maybe 2005 or something like that, I'm thinking. But
Yeah,
it's the only creator owned project that Keith and I ever did together.
right.
And
Yeah,
we just had a blast because we were free. There was nobody looking over our shoulders saying you can do this or you can't do that or you can't do this.
yep. I
And
mean, for those who don't know, the general idea is a crisis has happened in the world of superheroes, and one of their Superman equivalent, and I just haven't read through this in a while. Captain Valor has come to a different Earth. Basically, like what happened to Power Girl getting folded in, similar in that regard. And he's in a world where he did, because of one choice he didn't make years ago. He's just a normal schlub.
Right. He comes looking for his other self, thinking he's going to help him because his universe has been destroyed and the destructive villain is heading for this universe. But
Mm-hmm.
the guy that he finds is just himself as an average schmo. In fact, a massive, massive underachiever at the very
Oh
least.
yeah.
And so
Yep.
it's a buddy comedy because it's the growing relationship between the two of them. It's
Yep.
also a love story because Milo, who's our main character, his girlfriend in the normal world is the villain in the other universe. She enters
Exactly.
the picture. So there's a relationship between Valor and Caligulus, the villain, Milo
Yep.
and Steffi, Valor and Steffi, Milo and Caligulus. So it's a love story.
I love it. It's like a weird love
Quadrangle,
quadrangle.
I guess. Yeah,
And yet
exactly.
at the same time, it's not. But my favorite issue has to be the backstory issue. I'm trying to find which one it was, but just everything we find out. I believe it was 6 of the longer one, but that one, just finding out everything. Yep, there it is, about what led to their origin. And again, the
Right.
one. Now I got to ask. One thing I was always curious: did the world change once he became Valor? Because it feels like this one choice caused everything to become more super heroic, or was it always going to be that way in this world, whether he chose or not?
That's a great question, and I've never actually thought about that. But it seems that in all these superhero universes, kind of once you drop one of these guys into it, it's like planting a seed, and all the rest of these characters start to grow, the heroes, the villains, and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had for most of that run, we had a wonderful artist named Joe Abraham who did a
Oh yeah.
fantastic job on that.
Yep. And I say no, but Caligula's origin I like because both sides were technically in the wrong here in many ways.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
that's the thing. When we start out, we think that Milo was just this kind of pathetic loser, but he turns out to have a lot more strength than we realized in the beginning. Whereas
Mhm.
Captain Valor has a lot more flaws than we
Oh
realized
yeah.
at the beginning. They're all human. Probably
Exactly.
my favorite issue in the whole run is when Milo and Valor go to the therapist together to try to
Oh yeah.
work out their stuff.
Both issues with the therapy session, both in the
Yes,
main
yeah,
series and
right.
in the follow up.
In the last miniseries, we have all 4 of them in therapy together. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
So,
also a favorite, just because they come so close, and it's then made very clear it's less Steffi and more the power that's
yeah.
corrupting her. And I just love it. It's that moment where she's ready to change, and then the power, she's like, no, 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 and then she snaps again. It's like I love that revelation, that realization that yeah, how much of it was her this whole time, and how much of it was just insanity from too much power.
Right, exactly. And one of the other great thing I enjoyed about Hero Squared was we actually got to end it. If you pick up Boom Studios did a whole omnibus with the
Yep, that's
entire
what I have
series,
here.
plus our spin-off series Planetary Brigade, which was sort of Valor's adventures before he crossed over to this other universe. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you will get a satisfying ending to the story as well.
It did. It very did. If you guys want to check, I have a Pro Teachers Noob. After we're done here, I'll put a little, notification at the top to go to it, but where I went over the story, top to bottom, not the spinoff book, but just the main story. And yeah, it is still one of my favorites
Oh,
because
thank you.
it's a beginning, middle, and end. And I just love the characterizations. Like you said, how they're human. And that's just one thing I always liked about your guys' writing. It's how human some of these characters are.
Yeah,
Right?
the humor
Yeah.
is there to illuminate their humanity, really.
Exactly. Right down to even with blah ha ha. You guys aren't so known for that, but it's like everyone keeps thinking, oh, it's jokes. And I still remember that one issue of Booster Gold where he just lets off on Cyborg saying, hey, we also dealt with big, huge threats that you guys don't seem to give us credit for. It's always, oh, the volcano plan, oh, this and that. When it's been more than that. I love that. That is
Yeah, well, it's the same thing with JLI. They were human. They were more human and relatable than a lot of the other superhero, quote, serious superhero characters that I've written in a lot of ways.
exactly. Another one I want to bring up that's an all-time favorite of mine was DC, Superman Speeding Bullets. One of the Well, it's clever. I wish you had more space to go over it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, we could have done that as probably as a 6-issue miniseries. That's actually being reprinted. They're just putting out
Yep,
a new
yep.
Superman Elseworlds edition that has speeding bullets in it. So
Yep,
I'm happy
definitely.
to see that back in print. And in
Okay,
fact, last
good.
year, I
Yep.
think it was last year, McFarlane Toys put out the Batman figure from Speeding Bullets. So that was
Oh
nice.
yeah,
I have
and I
that.
just yep, I just love this whole idea that again, it's like yes, he's it's but it was intentional to take nods from the Tim Burton Gotham and everything. It very felt Tim Burton-y throughout all of this.
Well, the idea for people that don't know is that Superman's rocket comes from Krypton, but it's
Yep.
found instead by the Wayne family,
Oh yeah, I should have mentioned that. Yes,
not
yes. It
not
is.
not the Kent family. And little Bruce, who was really
Yep.
Kal-El, has to witness his parents' murder, and
Yep.
that traumatizes and twists him in all sorts of ways. So instead of growing up to be Superman, he grows
Yep.
up to be a superpowered Batman. And you don't want to mess with a superpowered
Oh
Batman.
no, no, you don't. No, you don't. And the fact that this is still an emotionally stunted um, Bruce Wayne because of all this. Because he went, how it happened? He went into seclusion. Who can
Yeah.
blame him?
Well, because he doesn't know he has these powers, and his emotional response to the murder of his parents, suddenly these beams come out of his eyes and he fries Joe Chill, you
Yeah.
know? And he has no idea. And it's just right. He retreats for quite a while until he figures out what he wants to do. And it's a long journey that involves Lois Lane and Lex Luthor, who evolves into the Joker in this world.
Yep.
And it was a really, really fun story to do. And Eduardo Barreto, of course, did the
Oh,
art.
rest in peace.
What a
Rest in peace.
fantastic artist. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done so much great bits here. And yeah, but especially with Joker, just and I love his story, how like, oh yeah, I ended up like I took some time off to heal, I lost some weight, watched TV, and then you're just like, wow, he already lost it, didn't he?
I keep hoping that I'll get a call from Warner Brothers Animation one of these days about turning this into an animated movie, because I think it would make a great animated movie.
Funny you say that. There's one question, especially since one of the guys in the chat, Pika Shades, is here. I would like to ask.
Okay,
You worked
ask
on
away.
Yep, you worked on Superman Red Sun. Now there was
Yes,
a lot of yep, yep. Go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
There was a lot of changes between comic and movie. Now, of course, that comes naturally, but some of the changes were quite drastic. And I was curious, were a lot of them your ideas? Were they above high? What brought
Yeah.
about those changes?
When you put these things together, I was working with Bruce Timm and Jim Krieg. They were the two producers. And basically we would get on the phone for like 90 minutes at a time and try to dissect this story. When you're adapting something into an 80 or 90-minute movie, especially something like Red Sun, which is a massive, sprawling story.
Yeah.
You turn every page and there's another new idea exploding out of the next page and the next page and the next page.
Yeah.
I really, weirdly enough, I hadn't read it before we decided to adapt it, and I sat down and I read it. It's like, wow, this is great. There's so much going on in this story. But when you're doing an adaptation, you have to boil the thing down and streamline it. It's like you have a giant redwood, and you have to kind of cut it down to a beautiful little bonsai tree, and you have to have the essence. So between the three of us, me, Bruce, and Jim, we worked out the various changes between the three of us.
Okay, because I was curious, like for example, Diana pretty much being into women only and not even interested. That felt a little like, no, I don't think I've seen that in a version. So I was wondering whose idea was that one, or
again, it came up between the three of us with all our comments.
Gotcha.
When you have three people bouncing ideas around, I couldn't tell you who came up with which idea and
No
which
worries.
not.
No worries.
So
I'm just curious.
we try to boil it down to its essence and honor the original story, but also you have to make it its own, because if it's exactly like the original, then you might as well read the book.
Exactly. I've heard that before.
Yeah, I've adapted a bunch of stuff in animation, and you want to stay true to the heart and soul of it, but you also want to build it into something else as well. And I know Mark Miller was happy with the result. So if Mark was happy with it, then I'm happy with it.
Fair enough. And you're also responsible for one of the best adaptations, most people will agree, especially of an Alan Moore work, for The Man Who Has Everything.
Yeah, that was
phenomenal.
That was the very first episode of Justice League Unlimited that I wrote, and I've said to people before, same thing. I had never read the story. I was not aware of its reputation. It's on one of these stories that's on the Mount Olympus of comic book stories. I think had I known I would have been too intimidated to adapt it. But they sent it to me, and oh, this is a great story. Let's go. And once again, working with the wonderful producers and staff writers, we worked out how the story should play.
Mhm.
And I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but I keep hearing that Alan Moore liked the adaptation. If that's true, then
That's one of the few things I've heard. Yeah, I've heard
then we
yeah.
did our job. I've never heard directly from Alan Moore's mouth, so I remain slightly skeptical.
Fair enough.
But if it's true, that's great. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, like even here, it's that and the parody Saturday Morning Watchmen, which I'm sure he liked that more as a, oh, they get the joke.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, as well as with of course, one of my other favorite books was Spider-Man, with Fearful Symmetry, aka Kraven's Last Hunt. And this one, as I told you before we got started, your intro here about the story, when the story is ready, changed how I handle writing. And the fact it started with Joker originally, and then you eventually go insane, obviously. So
Yeah.
you kept the original version to a point, but this, and then even then you weren't going to have Kraven. You were going to have some original villain, right?
That's what I mean. The stories tend to have a life of their own, and they lead you. You try to wrestle it into what you want it to be, and sometimes this can go on for years, if not decades, until that story find its final form. But that's what went on with Kraven. It started out primarily, well, actually, it started out as an idea for, believe it or not, a Wonder Man miniseries.
I remember.
Then evolved into 2 different Batman pitches that I kept changing. And then when Mike Zeck and I were offered Spectacular Spider-Man as an ongoing book, and I thought, oh, here's my chance to finally get the story out there. And of course, it worked. It was made to be a Spider-Man story. All those other versions didn't click, didn't work, because it really, really needed that final form of Spider-Man in the black costume, just married to Mary Jane. And yeah, originally I had a completely different villain in mind. I created an original villain. And one day I was sitting in my office and I was thumbing through the Marvel Universe handbook and came across Kraven. And I had never given Kraven a second thought in my life. And reading what they'd written about his biography, they mentioned that he was Russian. And I'm a huge fan of Dostoevsky and that kind of Russian soul and Russian duality. And like instantly I went, oh, I know who this guy is. Threw out the other villain. I don't even ask me about him because I don't remember anything about him.
I was about to, but
I have no idea. And
just went right out your head.
And the story came together. And because, and I'll give all credit to Jim Salicrup for this, originally it was going to be running in Spectacular Spider-Man while there were other stories running in the other books. And Jim Salicrup, who was the editor, said, we can't have Spider-Man seemingly dead and buried in one book and having adventures, fighting Dr. Octopus in another. It'll take away the reality of the story. So Jim, I think, is the first one in comics to ever take that idea of running that one story through all the books, which people have been doing ever since.
Yep, and that was a great one. Yeah, Mike Zeck's artwork was great here and everything.
Zeck is extraordinary, yeah.
Yep, and again, this has been also one of my favorites. I just love this opening bit was him coming to this for Joey, this Sug, that guy that Peter used as an informant, who died, and he shows up there with enough money for a decent piece of ground.
And interestingly enough, there's upcoming, I think it's coming out in August, there's the Spider-Man Black, White, and Blood, I think it's called. And I've got a story in there that is the story behind just that. What was his relationship with Joe Face? And what led to this moment where he showed up at the funeral? It's an interesting story that kind of cracks open and adds a little more, excuse me, to that mythology.
Yeah, and oh boy, the stuff with Kraven and the spiders and everything. Wow. Now, how have you felt when I know you've probably been asked before, but I have been a while since I've ever heard what your response was. How have you felt about them bringing Kraven back? Are you disappointed, or do you feel like what took them so long?
It's comics, and we're working in a shared universe, so you can't be disappointed. Everybody comes back eventually. Right. It's just the nature of the beast. And he stayed dead for a good 20 years, And when they brought him back, they brought him back in a really strong story, as I recall.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, they gave him a nice bit of space to be dead and buried, and then they brought him back, and that was fine with me. With me.
Right. And then, of course, you also did Soul of the Hunter, which, if I recall, this was done because someone brought up about what suicide is with religion.
Tom DeFalco had gotten a letter from somebody who was with a suicide prevention group who said we were glorifying suicide, which, if you
Hmm.
read the story in context, you
No,
can see that we are not at all, at all.
no.
It's very clear that Craven has serious mental health issues, that
Hmm.
he's inherited the same insanity that killed his mother. And in fact, his final words before he pulls the trigger are, "They said my mother was insane." Bam, you know? But
Exactly.
it disturbed me that anyone felt that way. And it sparked this idea for our sequel story where Peter is just kind of tortured by this guilt of what could he have done to have saved Craven. Um,
Definitely.
and this leads to an adventure that we don't know whether it really happens or whether it's all going on in Peter's mind as he
Right.
works through this guilt and this trauma.
Definitely. And again, I really like this as well. Just so, and yeah, like you just said, we don't know if it's real or not, or if it's just in his head. Just, yeah, there's nothing definite here, nor it's like, it's not like Craven's going to, even if it did happen, he's going to remember it anyway.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. It sort of exists in that world between the inner reality and the outer reality, and they're both true.
Oh, by the way, question from Pika about the, for the man who has everything. I have to ask, why and not have Supergirl in Robin's place? Good question.
Honestly, I don't remember. It was just it's what we landed on. We had,
Right,
I think again, remember we're doing this in a basically a 22-minute episode. So,
right.
and it's a story with a lot of direct emotional threads. So you want to boil it down to its essence. And I think by just focusing on that small group of characters, it helped the power of the story.
And I would agree with that, definitely. Now, your Justice League International, with, I mean, going back to that, did you guys ever, like, when it started, how did it start from at the beginning to what it eventually became known as? Or in your eyes, there was nothing that led into it. It's just what you guys wrote, and people just saw it differently from the beginning to when it picked up steam.
Yeah, all those things are true. So I've been working with Andy Helfer. I wrote the final, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 issues of the previous incarnation of Justice League, where we killed off Vibe and we killed off Steel, and it was the whole, kind of
Oh, yeah.
grand finale for the Detroit League. And a little
Hmm.
time went by, and Andy called me up and said, "Hey, we're doing this new Justice League book. Keith Giffen was going to write it and plot it, dialogue it
Hmm.
and plot it. But Keith, at that point in his career, didn't feel like he was ready, that he could handle the full writing chores. Would
Oh,
you want to dialogue it?" So he sent me Keith's plot for the first issue, and I'm reading what Keith has done, and I'm thinking, this guy doesn't need me. And I probably fought with Andy about this for 6 months, feeling like, you don't need me. What do you want me on this book? You don't need me. So I just kind of stumbled into it backwards. Keith and I, around the same time, worked. I was writing and he was drawing a Dr. Fate miniseries. So I
hmm.
was getting to know him, getting to know his extraordinary abilities as a storyteller and as a creative force, and
Hmm.
really kind of stumbled backwards into what turned into one of the greatest gigs of my career. And as we went along, once they wore down my resistance and I realized, oh, this is fun. The joy of working with Keith was he would do the plots, but if I wanted to add, 20 other things, because you can change a story so much through the dialogue,
Hmm.
I always honored Keith's plots, but I could always layer things on top of that.
Hmm.
You can do so much with the characters. You can introduce entire new plot lines through the dialogue that aren't there in the plot. And Keith would
Hmm.
see what I was messing with, and he would build on that. I would see what he had done, and I would build on that.
A perfect collaboration, in
It
other
was. There
words.
was no creative ego. And people think that, oh, you wrote together, so you must have been in the same room working on these stories. Nothing was further from the truth, especially in those first 5 years. It was a machine. We were doing Justice League and Justice League Europe and Justice League Quarterly, and I was doing spin-offs with Mr. Miracle and Dr. Fate and all these Martian Manhunter. So I was like, for 5 years, I was like up to here with
Hmm.
Justice League. And it was just a machine. I'd get Keith's plot, I'd write the script, off it would go. Keith and I would talk on the phone occasionally or see each other up in the office, but mainly we just kept rolling like a machine for 5 years. And
Hmm.
to us, I say this to people, and I don't know if people believe me. The book was a big success. In fact, for those 5 years, it was like its own subset of the DC universe. We had a line of books that was helping keep that company afloat.
Right,
But
right.
to us, it was just another gig. And when it was over, we moved on. And it
Yep.
wasn't until we got back together, I think it was what, 9 or 10 years later, for formerly known as the
Yep.
Justice League, that me and Keith and Kevin was so important to the success
Oh
of that
yeah,
show.
no hands down. One of the most expressionful artists
Oh,
I
he's
yeah.
extraordinary. I always say Kevin is a genre unto himself. There's no one
Yes.
like him. And we all went, oh, this is really good. It took 10 years for us to realize that we had something special. And from that point on, either the three of us or me and Keith together, we always continued to work together. Keith and I worked together right up through Scooby Apocalypse, which I guess ended in 2018 or 19.
Thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, I love the dialogue. It's the dialogue that seriously, I cannot think of a book of superheroes that with talking heads that actually feels dynamic. You know what I mean?
Well, and a lot of that is Kevin, because Kevin could sell that, and
Yes.
as we went along, Kevin began to kind of break, because in the beginning he was following Keith's layouts, but as he got more confident, he would break things down more. So you could see him take a page and what I thought would be in one panel dialogue, he would break into 3 or 4 panels and get a different expression and a different reaction and really sell it. No one does acting on the page better than Kevin Maguire. No one.
Agreed. Completely agreed. And just everyone here, just again, I just loved it all. I mean, Mary and everyone. I always also love the captions here about how you always like the proceeding was brought to you with absolutely no shame by those dusty relics of the 1980s. And
I spent sometimes more time working on the credits than I did on the rest of the story. I would sit there and just, I need a better joke. I need what can I put here? I said this last month. I got to find something else, and I would work it and work it and work it. And I tried almost with all my collaborations with Keith to always really throw in these crazy credits.
Oh, you guys even did the Defenders. That was a great one.
Yeah, we went to Marvel and did the Defenders. That was a lot of fun as well.
Are you at all aware that they actually kept it canon between, well, at least what happened was Hulk and Uma? Because that actually got brought up during Greg Pak's Incredible Hulk's run.
Oh, seriously? Oh, I didn't know that. That's great. They didn't just ignore us?
No, they did. They actually would be that Uma still has a thing for the Hulk and actually is brought in during his final arc. And it was just like, and she's a big part of that too. So it's like, wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you guys, which of course, Hulk tired, Umar just getting started. Just one of my favorites. Now, what about that issue? I don't have it up right now, but that particular issue was the artwork. The way it looks like how Umar is drawn in that one was, looks like a bikini just sketched on. Was that an art thing, or that if you can recall at all about that one?
I really have no memory of it whatsoever. If you showed me the image, I might remember, but
I'm trying to load it up. Yeah,
off the top of my head, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin drew her a little more
risque,
and that they added those other touches to cover her up a bit more.
Yeah, but my internet's having a bit of a hard time loading things up, at least on the site. Don't know if it's the site.
Okay.
But
it was fun. It was fun taking our unique brand of madness and bringing it over to Marvel.
That was, I love that so much. Just how hilarious it was and everything. And again, just how Silver Surfer's not even really important to the story, but he is.
That was Keith's brilliant idea. It's like it's the Defenders. Here's the Silver Surfer, and all he's doing is hanging out on the beach with these surfers, trying to figure out what in the hell they're doing.
Exactly.
And I had to do all this research and look up surfing slang.
Yep, definitely. Hold on, let me just think. It was issue 3 is where it happened. So at least that's what it looks like here, because you see she already has Bruce, and oh boy, just that joke as well about like he's really relaxed, and it's like, wow, what does that say about how well she banged him? But okay, come on, because I really want again. Where is it? Come on, stupid internet, But oh yeah, it was. Now, by the time of JLA, I can't believe it's not the Justice League. Of course, there was already stuff going on with leading up to Infinite Crisis. How did you and Keith react to a lot of that stuff?
Well, while we were working on that, for most of that, we didn't know what was going on, And I always say I had this plot line that I added through the dialogue where Ralph kept thinking Sue was pregnant.
Yep.
And she said, "I'm not pregnant. I'm not pregnant." No, no, it was a running gag through the whole book. It wasn't in Keith's plot. I just threw that in.
Hmm.
And at the end, what I originally had was Sue discovers that she really is pregnant, and they went, "No, no, 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 no,
Ooh.
no, no, no! You can't do that. You can't do that." I had no idea why we couldn't do that, but somehow I think by the time the fourth issue came out, word was beginning to slip down about what was going on. Because if you look at the last panel, the
Oh,
way
yep,
that
I remember.
Kevin the way that Kevin drew that, that was his sort of his way of noting that, and it was our
Oh, that was
goodbye.
intentional. Oh, that was
That
intentional.
was intentional on Kevin's part for sure. Yeah.
I had a feeling. It always felt so awkward, like, "Gee," but that was
Yeah.
intentional.
But
Wow.
here's the thing. Like I said before, it's a shared universe. People get to play with these things and do what they want. But Keith and I always felt like our
Yeah.
stories existed
Here's
in
what I
their
was talking about.
Umar. Yeah.
See what I
Yeah.
mean here? Looks a bit sketched on, and then you see her here. It just really doesn't look right. It just. Oh, come on, get back up there. Yeah, see what I mean? It looks.
Yeah, I don't remember what was originally there, or if this is what was originally there. Maybe Kevin had mists around her or something, and they said, "Hey, put her in a bikini." It's so long ago, I couldn't
I
tell
know,
you.
but you see what I mean, right? It just looks a little awkward, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Like, okay, I was just always curious about that one, but
Yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
back to yeah, I
So
can't
anyway,
believe.
what I was going to say was that Keith and I always felt that our stuff exists in its own universe, so that when we did Justice League 3000 and
Yep.
Justice League 3001, in our mind, we were picking up from where we left off with our original Justice League. All that stuff with Max shooting Beetle and everything else, that was another universe, and there were places where events in those universes were similar and events were different. But
Yep.
so we just kind of kept ourselves in our own little universe.
Oh yeah, and speaking of Justice League 3000, originally Kevin was supposed to be involved, but then backed out. What happened with that? I was always curious.
There were things that went on behind the scenes beyond our
Hmm.
control, and
Oh,
I don't. It's a long time ago, and I don't really need to get into it.
no worries, no worries.
We originally planned to do it with Kevin. We really wanted to do it with Kevin, and then things changed.
All
And
right.
the good news was we ended up with Howard Porter, who did a fantastic
Oh,
job. And then
yes,
later on, Scott Collins came aboard, and we might have even had other people in between. I don't remember,
a
but
few in between, yeah.
that was a book that we could have gone on with that for years and years. We had so much fun with
Oh
Justice
yeah,
League
you were
3000.
made an all-female league.
Yeah, at one point it was all women, and that was great, really, really great. We brought in
That was
Supergirl, and eventually, we brought in Beetle and Booster. We brought in Fire and Ice. It was so it really was our league resurrected in the future.
definitely, especially yeah, guy's a woman and everything, and
Yeah.
the fact that you had some characters get killed right off. It's like what? Then it felt like you guys were not afraid to shake up the status quo. Was that
Yeah,
because it was set in the future?
we just kept changing things and changing it up. We were canceled kind of abruptly, so the ending never
Hmm.
quite satisfied me. It kind of left a lot of things hanging. And that's another one I thought, man, this would make a great, great animated movie, Justice League 3000. What a
Definitely.
great concept for a standalone animated
Yeah.
movie.
Oh yeah, the secret history of the Justice League according to Ice. Wait, what? I just love that. Oh, there's Scooby Apocalypse. Boy, when that started just so like, wait, what are they doing with this? And as it went on, it just became this epic and everything.
And
Just
what you say is exactly how I felt. Keith called me up one day and said, Jim Lee has this concept for, of course, they're doing the Hanna-Barbera books. He has a concept for Scooby-Doo, and they want us to do it. And I was like, what? What? You want us to do what? But what I always
mhm,
said about working with Keith was I didn't care what the project was. It was the collaboration that mattered to me. Just to
mhm.
work with him was the goal. And so we jumped into it, and it ended up being one of our most fun gigs. We had such a great time. The book ran for 3 years, and again,
Mhm.
it was another one where we got to actually write an ending. Keith left before the end, so I did the
Oh,
last 6 or so issues by myself. But we got to wrap it up and end it, and that was fantastic. And I fell in love with those characters in that world. Absolutely fell in
mhm.
love with them. What was funny was that I was at the same time I was writing for the animated Scooby show. The name of which one was it?
Which one?
Be
That would.
Cool Scooby Doo. It was called.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
So all of a sudden, after all, out of nowhere, I'm working on a Scooby-Doo animated show. I'm working on Scooby-Doo comics, and I
And you're
was
just working on completely 180 from the Scooby
exactly,
Apocalypse.
exactly. And Scooby Apocalypse, actually, Scooby Apocalypse. Oh God, it must be about 5 or 6 years ago. I was approached by Warner Brothers because they were thinking of adapting it into
Ooh.
a live action movie, and I think that would have been great. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it never happened, but it still could. James
I
Gunn,
would
if you're
still see
listening.
Matthew. I would still see Matthew Lillard as still keep on as Shaq at the very least because he. I kept feeling that with him throughout when you guys were writing it. But different than his Shaggy, but I keep feeling like he could still do it.
Yeah, I would love to see that get adapted.
Yeah, but the idea of killing off Fred and everything, it was like, wow, what made you guys decide to do that?
It was, you follow the stories, you follow the characters, and it's not really, the way it feels when the story is really working is that you're not deciding to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
The characters are deciding that this is going to happen. The story is deciding for itself, and you
Mm-hmm.
just grab on and let that story take you where it's going to go, and hope that you can do your best to translate that.
Yep. Oh, and when you and Keith worked on Booster Gold, that was also a very good fun run. Now, did you guys? Was it meant to be a short-term run? Because if I recall right, Dan Jones was working on that mini series of.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember. Did the book go on after we left, or was it canceled?
Another one other arc. It was one other arc after you guys left that led into
Okay.
Flashpoint.
Okay, yeah, because I honestly don't remember. Again, I was in it to work with Keith, and we had fun,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I really remember about that. I see you have Doom Patrol up there.
Yeah. Oh, Doom Patrol was also great. The
That
fact.
was We did the
Oh yeah.
Metal Men. We did a Metal Men
Yep.
feature in the back of
Yep.
Doom Patrol.
Yep. Yep.
We were reunited with Kevin, and that's also one of my favorite. We could have done Metal Men for 20 years. I mean, we had so much fun.
Yep.
I
Oh.
see a question here. The story decides or the character decides? A little bit of both.
Yep.
Sometimes the character leads you and you just follow where they want to go. It's like people talk about Beetle and Booster. We didn't decide to make them a team. They just started talking and they hit it off, and we just kept following them. And sometimes it's the story. The story just takes a turn that you didn't expect. Something erupts and you're writing, and I go, and my favorite moment in writing is I'm typing and I go, I didn't know that. Where did that come from?
Like Guy and Ice.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that is one of my favorite couples, and to the point where I'm not going to bash the man, but I was not a fan of Tom King, how he wrote in his Human Target, where there's a point where Guy hits Ice, and I'm like, Guy would never raise a hand to her, not Ice, fire maybe, but never.
I didn't read that story, so I can't comment. Yeah.
Right, but I assure you, it just really feels like so many people don't get Guy. They don't get him at all.
Oh, he absolutely loved Ice. He wasn't very good at expressing that love, but he
Right.
absolutely loved her.
Yeah, and also I was also curious, Dr. Light being in the first issue and then leaving afterwards. Was that something that you guys were assigned her and then got rid of her?
My memory is that, especially in those early issues, there was like characters would show up, and then maybe someone up in editorial had something else they wanted to do with that character, and the character got pulled out. It took a while for us to find the balance. We would have loved to have had Captain Marvel around forever, but there was some sort of rights issue with Captain Marvel where we could only use him for a certain amount of time, and then he had to go. But in that way, by happy accidents, we found the group of characters that worked best for us.
Yeah, because I just asked because she's one of my favorite characters in female characters, and the fact that she's still recognized because of that cover, and all that. But yeah, the Metal Man stuff, I went over that with my friend with Pika Shades before, and that was just hilarious. And I just love how you guys made fun about Copper because it just feels like no one knew what to do with her. They brought her in, and it's just like she's just there.
And I love that bit where like they kept forgetting she was part of the team, and she'd have to reintroduce herself again. No, I've been here. Like, why don't you know who I am?
And Gold kept botching up her name, and to the point where like Crapper, Copper. That's what I said.
And that was my first, because it took me a while to really. I always like to find a definitive voice and personality for each of these characters, and it took me a few issues to find each one of them and how I wanted them to speak, what I wanted their point of view to be. And then before we knew it, we were canned, and that was the end of that.
And
I would have.
also Platinum. Sorry.
Go
Yep.
ahead. No, that's
I was
fine.
like, Platinum, your handling of Platinum was hilarious. It's this whole idea of how she's like, I'm an independent woman. Oh, Doc, I love you. Oh, what am I doing?
Right.
I just love that so much, especially the whole like, whoops, I forgot to ask where he's at. And then he sees the female in the fembot, and she's like, oh, you bitches are dead. Just
honestly, you remember these stories better than I do.
well, I went over them recently.
Yeah.
But you also did stuff with New 52, especially around Justice League Dark. The Trinity of Sin. How was that? Working on.
Well, I really love the deep bench of DC supernatural characters. So I started with Phantom Stranger, first writing it with Dan DiDio, then writing it on my own. And so I anytime I get to work the supernatural corners of the DC universe, I enjoy it. And then I moved on to, well, actually I was writing them simultaneously. I moved on to Justice League Dark, and Justice League Dark is great because you could pull in anybody. You get to write Swamp Thing. I got to bring back Vampire, character I created at the beginning of my career. You could just pull in anybody that you want. And it was just so much fun. So much fun. I loved. Justice League Dark is another one. The book got canceled after I don't know. I must have done it for a couple of years, and then but I could have kept going with that book forever.
That was a very good one. And you did the Blight during Forever Evil, where you had all the characters, all those titles you're working on team up.
Yeah. It was really fun. Really fun.
Oh, another book I went over just recently on my with my pro teachers do was the Justice League Gods and Monsters prequel stories. How was it working on that leading into doing this prequel? Because it felt like, especially the Justice League one, felt like it was like a whole movie in and of itself.
Yeah, that was great fun. I worked on that with Bruce Timm. We worked out the stories together, and then I wrote the scripts. And Bruce, you're not going to find a better storyteller than Bruce.
Right.
This great mind behind all this brilliant DC animated stuff. And it was fun because we got to do first we did solo stories with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman from this universe, and then we had the whole team together. And so I got to work with a lot of different artists on it, and really enjoyed those stories. And I know that the Superman character, who was essentially a Mexican Superman, I went to a convention in Mexico back in 2017, and let me tell you, the response to that character, unsurprisingly, was huge. I
loved him too. He's not an evil Superman. He's an anti-hero. That's what I loved about this. None of these are evil or anything. You would think they would be, but no, they're more edgier, like kind of like what they're doing now with this Absolute line they're about to do, where they're edgy but not full on out of character either.
Yeah, I think they missed a great opportunity both with the animation and with the comics with these characters, because there was a whole universe of stuff to explore there and build on, because they were really, really, really interesting characters. Wonder Woman had a tie to New Genesis and all that Kirby mythology. Batman was a vampire. It was really, really interesting stuff that Bruce came up with.
Did we have it here? Larfleeze. How was it working on that book? Because that one was always hilarious, but again, ended too soon. Ended way too soon.
Yeah, that was fun too, because it was just Larfleeze kind of opened things up to absurdity, and you had to find a way to write a book about a main character who was fundamentally unlikable. You know what I mean? He is a nasty piece of work, But one of my favorite things that we did, because we had Nort from our Justice League, we brought him into the Larfleeze story. So we ended up revealing that Nort and Larfleeze were actually relatives, that they were like distant cousins, and I loved that.
So, I love that too.
And Scott Collins did the art on Larfleeze and did a beautiful job on that book. Just incredibly creative stuff.
And then you revealed they were supposed to be in Justice League 3001, and then it ended, and Larfleeze was all like, "Oh, we're not doing it. What do you mean we're not doing it?"
That's the nature of the beast too. You can't you can't control whether a book sustains. Justice League lasted for 5 years. Scooby lasted for 3 years. Justice League 3000 was only 2 years. Larfleeze was probably only a year. And we have no control over that. That's all between the book and the audience and the people that make the decisions about what they're going to keep going with. So all we can do is just do our best.
Exactly, and you also did the Just League Infinity miniseries. Was
So
that? Oh,
Justice
yeah.
League Infinity was basically, I think I wrote about 7 episodes of Justice League Unlimited. So this was the next season of
Mm-hmm.
Justice League Unlimited, and
Felt that way.
I worked with James Tucker in a similar way that I had worked with Bruce Timm on the Gods and Monsters. In that, James was the producer of that show, one of the producers of that show.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly creative guy and one of the nicest guys I've ever worked with. And
Mm-hmm.
so we would just get on the phone and we'd work out the story. Then I'd go off and write it. He'd give me whatever notes he had about it because he was the expert. He knew if this didn't fit with the continuity or if this character wouldn't do this or that. But I was given a lot of freedom to play there. It was delightful to work with James. Ethan Beavers, the artist,
Oh
nailed
yeah.
the look of those characters from the animated universe. And it really was the next season. And we got to tell a really big story. We got to move the characters forward. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I keep saying this, but that would make another great animated movie. It would really
It
would.
should. Yeah, with that cover. I remember there was some people showing that cover around with Diana and Darkseid. Because if I remember right, that was always implied that there was, and not something between them, but that one, like Darkseid had. I always remember there was something about it. I don't remember exactly
Right.
what.
And this was a different Darkseid from a different universe also.
Yeah,
So you had to keep that in mind. So it wasn't the
exactly.
Darkseid that we know.
Exactly. And you also, when your time was on Superman, it's actually during, I believe you were involved with Emperor Joker. Yeah, Emperor Joker. How was it working on that story?
That was fun. I'm not a big fan of crossovers. I really like to
Mm-hmm.
be left alone in my little corner of the universe to tell my
Mm-hmm.
stories. The Emperor Joker crossover was really, really a lot of fun, as I recall. Really,
Yeah,
really fun.
yeah, that was a lot of fun. And there's more from that. You also did the Supergirl Wings, the Elsewhere. I've actually not gone over that with anyone yet, but I plan on it.
That's
But
actually going to be reprinted in
yep,
another upcoming volume of Elseworlds as well. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot of stuff there, and that's just my DC work. It's not even
Oh
the
yeah, oh yeah. Your Marvel work, then it's like they only have some of it here, not even all of it.
Yeah,
You
I know.
worked
I
on
know. My 2 years of Spectacular Spider-Man with Sal Buscema, which is probably my favorite thing I've done at Marvel,
oh
is not even up there.
yeah, yeah. Like what the heck? What the heck?
I think they're going to get to it. I think we will see a collection, and I think once they do the collection, we'll see it. We'll see it on Marvel Unlimited. It's
Yep. I
good.
mean, I know exactly. I mean, and come on, it's Spectacular 200, one of the best Spider-Man issues in my opinion. One of the
Yeah,
best.
that's if I look for an ongoing storyline from that run, The Child Within was what I loved, but if I was going to pick one single issue, it would be Spec 200. Yeah.
I mean, that was. I mean, the death of Harry and everything was just so. You really took you made the goblins what they became in general. Just because I mean, when I think about with Harry, I think about your writing all the time because of how well it was. This balance and self-destructiveness and everything. How it felt like what people toyed with Norman, but never did. You did with Harry.
Yeah, well, what I loved there was this dynamic between Peter and Harry. First of all, Harry is a lot more sympathetic in a lot of ways than
Oh
Norman is,
yeah.
because
Oh yeah.
we know the childhood that twisted him that way. Which is something I'm exploring in the series I'm writing now, which is called Shadow of the Green Goblin.
Mm-hmm.
But in Spec, you had Peter and Harry. They're best friends. They love each other, and they're mortal enemies, and they hate each other simultaneously.
Yeah.
So that, you can't ask, as a writer, you can't ask for anything more dramatic, a more dramatic situation to play with.
Exactly. Also, Ben Riley. Again, whenever I think about Ben's best writing, I think of with your stuff, because you really get a lot of these characters that make them. Well, I think it's part of your writing is why people remember them so fondly.
Yeah, Ben is a character. I was saying to somebody just recently, I know these characters deeply, like they're my friends. I know everything that's going on in their heads and hearts. And Ben is a character I fell in love with right away. And so whenever it was last year or the year before, when I got to revisit him with
Mm-hmm.
David Baldion with the Ben Riley miniseries that we did, it was like being reunited with an old friend. It was
It
really,
did.
really great to dive in there and play with that character again.
I'm sure people are going to want to ask, what is your opinion on the chasm stuff? If you've been keeping up with that.
I have not, so I have no opinion. How's that?
Okay. Okay. Perfectly fair. Perfectly
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
But also hold on. Oh yeah, the Death in the Family. Robin Lives. Hey, how was it being asked to do this? To be asked, continue on with that alternate issue?
Well, my first question was, why isn't Starlin doing this? It was his
I'll be
story.
honest, that popped in my head
Yeah,
too, but
but
I also
they did ask him, and apparently he did not. He chose not to do it. Maybe he felt like he said what he wanted to say and didn't want to revisit it. What attracted me to it was the opportunity to really deal with the repercussions, with the
yeah.
psychological and emotional repercussions of what Jason went through. And Jason is a character I'd never written,
Hmm.
so so that was really, I'm always looking for, in these universes, I've written so many of the characters. So to have a character that I've never written before, especially someone who's gone through this profound trauma, almost being beaten to death, watching his mother die.
Yeah.
And then of course, the other part of this is that Bruce Wayne has to finally really look himself in the mirror and ask that fundamental question: why am I doing this? Why am I bringing essentially child soldiers into my war?
Exactly. I
You
mean,
know?
it's like I talked about this when they released the Robin Lives one shot, just reprinting that. I was talking with Pika about that, and I made it very clear, like you're in a very different mindset between someone dying and someone nearly dying and yet surviving. Big difference in your mindset you will have afterwards, and
Yeah.
you've really taken that. But I want to ask one thing: what made them decide to, like, in universe? What led to the Ayatollah and all that just backing out on Joker being there? Like, because that just felt
Honestly,
like,
I
yeah,
just didn't think I thought it was going to get in the way of the story that I wanted to
fair
tell.
enough, fair
Yeah.
enough. I was just curious about that, but
And I
yeah.
really thought also, if you're Iran and you want to have any kind of semblance of getting along with any other countries, you do not want this uncontrollable lunatic
Mhm.
representing you in any way. It's just gonna it's gonna lead to trouble. It's
I did
just
get
gonna lead to trouble.
I do give props though for you keeping it with Iran and Ayatollah, and not doing with the retcons they have done of it being Kwarak and everything.
No, we're picking up from exactly where that story left off. So we went with what it was.
Yep, no retconning, no nothing. I do appreciate that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yep. Oh, this, but yeah, the stuff here, like Superman is like, you knew I was following you, and again, this big question about
And
is
the question
Batman?
is, did he or did he not? Right?
Yeah,
Because
it's what.
he has been
Yeah,
pushed to the edge here, and mostly it's his own guilt that's driving him more than anything else. He can focus it on the Joker, but it's his own guilt that's driving him.
exactly, and then yeah, like I said, because like I said, different headspace, completely different headspace compared to when he died, when Jason died. You know who to blame. It's over. It's done with. You can still blame yourself, but it's not. You're not going to have that reminder there. Whereas this, you're like your failure's still there, but he's still there in front of you because it could happen again,
Right, right, and Jason has PTSD. He's completely
big time.
traumatized. So at the end
Exactly.
of that issue, when he goes to prove himself by taking on the Scarecrow, it's the stupidest thing he could ever possibly
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
and he ends up in worse shape than when he started.
Exactly.
It's
It's like it's the guy of fear. Why would you go after what you've been through?
Yeah, and then of course at the end when Bruce is he's busy beating up the Scarecrow, and the cop is like, "I'd worry less about the Scarecrow and this kid laying on the floor who's a whimpering wreck," you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
and the fun thing too is also because we're just taking off on our own little timeline here. It's like an
Mhm.
Elseworlds essentially. We could do anything we want with these characters. So where we land at the end of the series is very different from where we started. You'll see that the characters are all in very, very different places, and that's all I want to say about that.
Uh, well, I was just going to ask: is it a definite end, or does it leave it open for more?
It's a definite, clear ending that leaves it open for more. How's that?
So basic. In other
But
words, if
so
you end it there, it's a good ending. But if you want to
exactly.
do more, you
But
can
if
do
there, but
more.
if there's more, there are threads that we can pull to build other stories from there.
That's good. That's
I,
good. I
I
mean,
already have another story running around in my head, but that doesn't mean we're ever going to get to do it. But it's always nice to have that door, you know?
exactly, exactly. Again, was just looking over just so much of the stuff you have worked on over the years. Just
Now,
like I
someone
said.
asked what my first work in comics was. I started at DC
Hmm.
in the late '70s when the way Writers Broke In was on the anthology books.
Yep. Yep.
Weird War Tales, House of Mystery, all those books. So Those were my very, very first stories. What we were talking about, these short 6 to 8 page. The very first thing that I sold was an 8-page story called, with the deathless title, "The Lady Killer Craves Blood."
Right.
It was the story of a Son of Sam type killer who's going around, killing women, and he kills the girlfriend of this guy who turns out to be a vampire. So it's a story about a vampire hunting a serial killer, all in 8 pages.
Wow.
That was was that the first one I sold? Yeah, that was the first one I sold. The first one was printed, I think, was a Weird War Tales, but they were all around the same time. All around the same time.
Yeah. By the way, going back to Nord, just how does it feel that people still remember him? He's just one of those, like, crazy characters that people both mock and yet adore.
I feel the same way. Whenever Keith and I would get a new project, I would always go, "Is there some way we can get Nord into this? Can we get Nord into this?" Because he's just, I remember we went out to lunch with Andy Helfer one day when we were both up visiting DC, and we cooked Nord up over lunch, basically. And and I've loved that character ever since. He's just so silly. And yet so relatable.
Yeah, by the way, here's the that Metal Men thing. First they have a different issue, but because Kevin
Maguire drew it, yeah.
But then here it is. Starting at this point. Yeah, this just collecting all of them was great. Just
some of Kevin's best work there too. I thought Kevin did beautiful, beautiful work on that.
I really adore that as well. Just, but I gotta say, I really like the final issue. Just that stuff was gigantic and everything.
Yes.
Just like, whoops. And then if I had to leave Beto and all that, but then the dibs on the bra. What? Oh, yeah. Just jokes like
what's
that.
Fun for me is that I rarely go back and look at those things. So when I do pull them out and look at them, I'll laugh at the jokes because I've forgotten them, And I figure if I'm laughing, they must really hold up pretty well.
Yeah.
And again, look at that artwork. I mean, Kevin is just knocking it out of the park. Panel
should have been animated. This should have been animated.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also have like I'm totally asexual, right? And I want you to stay that way. Oh yeah, and this guy, I just love how he goes from being crazy to after he finds out, oh, they're back. He's back on the show. He's all just like, oh no, I'm perfectly fine now. Just for the question, you're not.
Well, look at that page and look at the change in expressions in all those panels. That is Kevin doing what he does that no one else can quite capture.
I know. It's just like, yes. I just want to be clear. You're not still an overlord, right? Oh, yeah, of course I'm joking. Sort of. Just the dialogue here just cracks me up. And then, boom. Idea. That's all, folks. Again, this definitely feels, of course, like we got cut off. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. And we did. But, that, like I said, when you're a freelancer, you don't have control over those things. Your job is to write the best story you can, and other hands decide whether those stories will continue or not. And sometimes things get canceled or don't get received well. And 10 years later, you discover that, people love that stuff. And, people come up to you at conventions with work that you thought no one was reading. And they say, this is my favorite comic.
Yep. Now, also, you guys defined Guy Gardner from, you didn't create him, but you defined him. And how was it? Like, what is your take on Guy Gardner when writing him? Like, when you're writing him, who is Guy Gardner to you?
He's obnoxious. He's arrogant. He's angry. And beneath all that, he's a pussycat. But he's trying to protect himself. You know what I mean? He's one, some people that are that angry, that are that obnoxious, that are so apparently full of ego, are really the most insecure people that you could possibly find, And that's my take on, and that's why the Guy Ice thing worked, because she could see through the bluster to his heart.
Exactly. It's the reason why you have fires like, why do you see it him? And it's like, exactly what you don't see it him.
Right, exactly
what you don't see it him. And I just love that relationship so much, because it is like we said, like the one you would never see coming, but that's because that's the point, because you're everyone. And I think that's the problem. Everyone sees Guy as everything, how Ice does it. How everyone I think the thing who doesn't get Ice sees him the way Fire sees him. And it's like, that's the problem. It's like, that's more to the character than that.
Yeah, sometimes the people that have the most kind of porcupine quills around their personality have them there because they're protecting something very vulnerable inside themselves.
Exactly. So, and you had mentioned Shadow of the Goblin here. Yeah, this was just a very interesting idea. Like this whole Norman was not the first Green Goblin, but yeah,
Yeah,
or the first Goblin.
this is all takes place, like as we said, I think in the early days of
Mm-hmm.
Peter's career. He's only been Spider-Man for maybe a month. It's only a month after. Well, he's been, Spider-Man the Entertainer, but he's only been Spider-Man the Hero. It's only been a month since Uncle Ben died. So this is
Mm-hmm.
this 15-year-old kid in way over his head, dealing with his grief, dealing with Aunt May's grief, and trying to be a hero. And what 15 and trying to understand these insane powers that he has. Um, and it's a fascinating period in Peter's life. You know,
Yeah, just yeah.
I see some of these alternate covers that I've never seen.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah, that one. There was go back. There's one more. This one is phenomenal. The
Oh,
one with the
oh,
goblins coming out of the back of Norman's head.
yeah, that it was
Absolutely
all the pumpkin
phenomenal.
bombs behind it. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
huh? Now, wait, I gotta ask you this: when handling Norman, do you feel like there's still a good man in there, or do you think he was never good?
Well, that's one of the questions that Peter's trying to address because the story is being told by Peter many years later, and he's looking
Mm-hmm.
back. Oh, that go back. That's the
Oh,
cover I haven't seen. Let me take. That's
this
a
one?
great cover. I don't know who
Yeah.
did that, and it looks very. It has a
Oh,
very Gil
Pen,
Kane look to it too.
it's Panosian after Gene Colan.
Oh, okay. After Gil Kane, I think. Yeah, because it's a
No,
very.
no, no. It says after Gene Colan.
Oh, really? Because it looks more like Gil Kane to me. That's okay.
Yeah,
Whatever the
yeah.
case may be, it's a great cover, and I haven't seen it. Anyway, Peter is like, I imagine this is Peter like he's like 50 years old looking back on these events. And
Mm-hmm.
he's still, Norman, if there's one demon in his life, he can't find, Peter is a very forgiving, very understanding person. He cannot forgive Norman. And part of
Mm-hmm.
him wants to see Norman as a complete lunatic and a complete demon. And another part of him has compassion. And the two parts of him are wrestling. And he will never find peace with that question.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know when Norman seemed to love Harry. Did he really love Harry? Was he just manipulating Harry? When he was loving toward his wife, did he really love her? Was he manipulating her because he could turn around in a heartbeat and be a monster to these people? And Peter just isn't sure, and he just doesn't know. He just
Yeah,
doesn't
that
know.
exactly. You just can never know. Now, before we get to wrapping things up, I want to ask lastly about the Clone Saga because
Okay.
that's one of the more notorious things on there on with Spider-Man. But how was it with when you're handling during that? I mean, obviously you mentioned about what you're caring about Ben and everything, but how that whole thing just lasted too long,
Yeah, I
obviously.
was I bailed out. I put on my parachute and jumped out after about I don't know, a year maybe, and I know,
Right.
or less. It went on, and that was the problem. It went on for a long time. But I have to say, my period of working on the Clone Saga, one of the most fun times I ever had in comics because we had a great group of writers. We used to get together every few weeks up at Marvel. We'd
Mm-hmm.
spend the day in a meeting room. We'd have lunch. We'd yell. We'd scream. We'd laugh. We'd have fun, and we'd work out these stories. And then everyone would go home and write their chapter. And it was really
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like a TV writer's room. It had that
Mm-hmm.
feeling. We all created the story together. We all had things to offer. We all really liked and respected each other. Danny
Mm-hmm.
Fingeroth for most of that was the main editor on those books, and he was great. Later, Bob Budiansky came on. So we just had a great time, and I think some great things came out of the Clone Saga. And my memories are all good about
Right.
working on those books.
Right, but and then of course you have the death of Aunt May, also one of the best issues there. And then she's an actress.
Yeah, that's comics, right? I was hoping they would have waited at least a few more years before that happens, but
Yeah, yeah,
but
but the fact it's when they do it like that, where they say, "Oh, it's an actor," it just feels like, well, she was a damn good actress, but yeah, I mean,
whatever.
yeah,
That's a shared universe, and everybody gets to play with the toys in the way that they and their editor choose to. So you can still go back and read that Death of Aunt May story, and I think it stands on its own.
oh, it does. It most definitely does. But yeah, now currently you have a crowdfunding going on. Still 10 more
Yes.
days left. And yeah, tell people about this.
So the DeMultiverse. So this is the second DeMultiverse Kickstarter that we've done. What we did with the first Kickstarter, this is phase 2. With phase 1, we launched 5 new books, 5 genres, 5 different artists. For me, it's just one of the most amazing creative experiences of my life to get all these ideas out there at once. The idea the first time around was we had 4 main books and a bonus book. With the 4 main books was to put them out, have the people that supported the Kickstarter, have them vote on the book that they like best, and then we would continue that book. But we gave them the option to vote for all, see all of them continued, and that's what got the most votes. So what we're doing with the Multiverse Phase 2 is continuing all those books with second issues of all the books.
Wow.
So, for anyone that has been a fan of my work, that has enjoyed my work, this is me kind of unshackled, having the most fun I've had in years, telling all these new stories with these wonderful artists. Any Man, we see Any Man on the screen.
Yep.
Any Man on the surface is the most traditional superhero story of the bunch. David Baldion, who did the Ben Reilly series with me, does the art. Fantastic artist. And as we get deeper and deeper into the story, you see that everything we believe about this character going in is not true, and it opens up a whole can of worms, and it becomes a very, very different story. For the second issue, Derek Robertson, a co-creator of The Boys, has done our variant cover for that one.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, so we have some great artists doing variant covers. Godsend, my one-liner on that is Kirby's New Gods meets Philip K. Dick meet The Matrix. It's a story about personal and cosmic identity. It's about who we think we are versus who we know, who we really are, versus what we take reality to be versus what reality really is. It's a big cosmic epic. And Matthew Dow Smith did the art on the first issue. He couldn't return for the second issue, so we got Scott Koblish. Scott, who people know, I think most of all from his work for like 6 or 7 years on Deadpool, did a beautiful job. And Matt came back and did our variant cover. And so if you like sort of cosmic stories that question the nature of reality, then Godsend, I think, will be right in your wheelhouse. Layla in the Lands of After, Sean McManus, one of my all-time favorite collaborators. We worked on Dr. Fate for DC. We did 2 years of Dr. Fate, one of my favorite runs ever. And Sean has only gotten better over the years. And this is a fantasy adventure about a girl who thinks she's been swept away like Dorothy to a magical land over the rainbow somewhere. But it turns out this is the afterlife. She's been hit by a car, and this, she's dead. And then she discovers, well, she's not quite dead. She's in a coma. And if she can the window is closing to get back. So it's her journey to try to get back to her body before that window closes, accompanied by her grandfather and her cat, both of whom are dead, and a not quite fallen angel. And it's a really interesting adventure through the afterlife. And our variant cover for the second issue, if you're familiar with Marguerite Sauvage, wonderful artist, just amazing work. I fell in love with her work when I discovered it, and I was so glad we got her to do that cover.
Yeah, before we go further, Pika wants to say something. Yeah, I'm going to apologize for, he did a Dr. Nefarious edit going in Superman Red Sun, but now he feels that, he blamed you unfairly for the changes that he would.
You know what? People are allowed to like what they like and not like what they like, as long as people's opinions are expressed respectfully. I can't expect everyone to love everything I do. Life doesn't work that way, So it's okay if you had problems with some of the changes. That's fine. It's okay.
Okay, but next you have Wisdom.
Next we have Wisdom, which with Tom Mandrake.
Tom Mandrake, phenomenal artist.
You know him from Spectre. And the great thing, this is a supernatural Western. So, Tom, we know, does supernatural really well. He also, if you ever read the Kents miniseries that he did back in the day.
I adore that book. I adore that book.
He knows how to do the Western. So it's this book is sort of like a Lord of the Rings in the Old West. It's a big, when you're doing the first issue, it's like you're doing a pilot. So you can't really get to all the big stuff that's coming. But this is a story that's going to unfold and unfold into a massive epic set in the Old West with gunslingers and demons and magic.
Wow.
And it took all my love of Westerns that I had as a kid, and I get to express it through this story. And Patch Zurcher did the variant cover for the second issue.
Oh, yep.
And it's a fantastic cover. Just beautiful, beautiful. I keep saying all these guys are my favorite artists, but they are. I love them all. I'm so lucky that I get to work with these kind of collaborators on these books.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so this is our bonus book, The Edward Gloom Mysteries, which my one-liner is sort of, if Charles Dickens wrote Frankenstein, the main character is a monster cobbled together from the parts of other people, but he's not he's a genius. He's a poet. He's a musician. He's a
Oh,
historian. He's a philosopher, and he becomes a detective because the city that he lives in is being invaded by this monster plague. And he and his ghost girlfriend and the rest of his team have to investigate this mystery
girlfriend.
and figure out what's going on. It's illustrated by a fantastic artist from Greece that a lot of people don't know and they should know, named Vasilis Godzilis. And I hope from people seeing his work in this book that they that more and more work comes his way, because he is such a talented guy.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the Pat Zurcher cover for Wisdom.
Yep.
There's Marguerite's cover for Layla. Look at
Great
that
cover. Yeah.
incredible. Matt's cover for Godsend.
Yep. And not showing here yet.
Which one wasn't showing?
Derek
Roberts. Yeah, but you can you'll be able to find that online. The Derek Robertson cover is out there. Great cover that Derek did. And how could I forget Liam Sharp? Because we have the books available as individuals. You could buy the variant cover, the original cover, and then we have a collected edition. So Liam Sharp, one of my favorite collaborators, also. I keep saying this. We worked on Man-Thing together at Marvel in the 90s. He just was nominated for a 2024 Eisner, and he did the cover for both our collected editions. So people should know, if they want to jump in with Phase 2, all the first issues are available on the Kickstarter.
Yep. I see them all right here.
You don't have to jump in blind, and you can get them as single issues, as add-ons, or in packages, any way you want them. You can get them digitally. You can just buy the collections, whatever you want. So there's a lot of choices. We have autographs, and we have Zoom calls. If you want to have a 40-minute Zoom call with me, that's one of the rewards along the way. So, in order for these books to continue, and we want them to continue beyond this point, we want to complete these miniseries, and then I have many, many more stories to tell with these characters. By meeting our basic goal, that means the books are going to get printed, and anyone that supports the Kickstarter is going to get their books. But in order for them to continue beyond this point, we need to go way beyond that. So anyone that has enjoyed my work, I ask you please to come along. It's one of the most exciting creative journeys of my life, and I would love to have everyone along for the ride.
I definitely plan on backing it after I get paid in a couple of days. So
yes, it's good to get paid first. Don't go into debt to back the multiverse. But when you have the money, please do come along.
I definitely will. I mean, you have the T-shirt add-ons, and
autographs. The Zoom calls, everything. So
wow, this is just so great. I definitely plan on backing it. It's just so great to see creators going in and doing these type of things, and all written by you. So that's amazing. Just all these different worlds that you've come up with.
For me, as a creator, it's like it's a once in a lifetime experience to get all these ideas out at once. Usually it's like one thing at a time, and sometimes, as we were talking about, it can take years to get that idea out. And it was my partner who, David Baldy, my business partner, who put this Spellbound imprint together, who said, let's do 4 of them all at once. And I thought, what a great idea. Let's go and let's do it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the only other one I can see of is Jeff Johns with his Ghost Machine stuff. Him having 4 books he's writing currently, or 3 books currently, and all that. It's like,
yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I really do want these books to continue, but we can't do it unless we have the support.
Yeah, but thank you so much for coming on. It was just so great having you here. Thank you so much for just taking time out. And
it's great to talk to you. Thanks to everybody. If we didn't get to any, are there any questions that we want to get to before I go that we might have missed? Or did we get to them all?
We got most of them. One was asked about Just League 3000. You had already answered that pretty much.
Okay.
But yes, and now what else do you have besides the multiverse? What else do you have going on that you're free to talk about?
We got the multiverse going. We have the last issue of Shadow of the Green Goblin coming up. We have 3 more issues of Batman to go. I've written an episode of the new Cape Crusader series that will be on. Yeah, my episode is for the 2nd season, so you won't see it right away. The past couple of years, I've had 2 novellas that have come out, one called The Witness, one called The Excavator. You can get those on Amazon. I think they're 2 of the best things I've ever written. And I'm working on my 3rd novella right now. So that's a lot. And then, of course, with a little bit of luck, we will continue with the DeMultiverse. So that's 4 or 5 different books to write there. So I'm always happy when I'm busier, and I'm very busy right now, very creative. And
Hmm.
although I have to say, once this Kickstarter is done, I'm going on vacation because it's a
You
lot.
deserve it. You
It's
deserve it.
it's a lot of work. You really have to pay attention to it all day, every day until it's done.
Yep. But yeah, so guys, go out there, support this campaign, do what you can, and just keep just keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yep. Thank you very much, and thank you to you guys all on the next one.